Hello, everybody, and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. I'm your host, Sam Biccarinio, and this is your review show. We had 6 games this weekend in the WSL with plenty of goals, plenty of excitement up and down the table. And for the first time in a while, I think we've got a full cohort of regulars on the pod today. First up, well, actually, these 4 will all be people that you've seen if you've watched our Decoding the Match episode. It was put out, I think, yesterday. It will be, as you're listening to this, available on YouTube as it's a vlog. It's the best place. You can listen to it on Spotify as well, wherever you get your podcast. But the man you listened first in that episode was Jacob Bernstein, who isn't looking quite as chipper as you were doing before the match.
Yeah, not quite. It's just another week in the life of Tottenham Hotspur. On Saturday, you get smashed 5-2 in the North London derby. On Sunday, Igor Tudor gets sacked. I mean, between the men and the women, I mean, you're at least you're kept entertained.
It was nice that while the men are on an international break, at least the women can take over the mantle and lose a game for you to keep the club run going. The next person you listen on that would have been just before the game in the press box with myself and Laura Howard. It was Mr. Tom Maher. You are looking a bit more chipper than you were doing before the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really exciting game, really interesting game, and I'm excited to get into it today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about the North London derby. For Jacob's sake, we won't make it too long a segment. But someone who I'd probably say actually isn't looking as chipper as they were on the podcast, but that's probably just because she's not in the pub. Izzy Duddy, nice to see you again.
Yeah, I was probably looking a bit too chipper when I was on the podcast on Saturday. But no, I'm still riding the high. It's it was quite nice. It was quite nice to go out on Saturday and see that, and then just like chill in front of several goals at watching the Villa match on Sunday. So yeah, good weekend of football for me.
I did enjoy it in my seat, looking over a lovely golden hour, watching Leicester score a third in quick succession. But on Saturday, it was derby day in the WSL. From 3-0 down, the Toffees scored 2, but couldn't quite come unstuck against Liverpool, who won the Merseyside derby. Then in the Manchester derby, the away team also went 3-0 up, but that was all. City were vivvying it up at Old Trafford. And North London was painted red. Russo hat-trick, firing the Gunners into a 5-2 victory. Then Sunday started with a bang as Chelsea beat Villa late on in a 7-goal thriller. The siren sounded as Una's Lupa rescued a point for West Ham at home to London City Lionesses. And finally, the Seagulls flummoxed the Foxes with a 1-0 win. But we're going to start with the game at Goodison Park. This was the first one on Derby Day on Saturday. Everton 2, Liverpool 3. Liverpool going into half-time with a 3-0 lead, thanks to 2 from Kerry Holland and then a Fernando's own goal. The second half with Everton's, however, a goal from Galley, a deflected free kick, came just before a very silly second yellow for Liverpool captain Grace Fisk. And then the winter deadline day signing, Zara Kramzar got a second for the Toffees shortly before full time, so finished 3-2 to the Reds. Both Merseyside derbies in the WSL this season have had 5 goals. This time Liverpool were the victors after Everton won 4-1 on the opening day. Everton had more shots in this game, in fact, double the shots, 18 against 9. Only a little bit more XG, though, 1.6 compared to 1.3. Liverpool were a lot more clinical, though. 5 shots on target equaling Everton's, but 2.2 expected goals on target to just 0.9 for Everton. So not a great day for either goalkeeper, but pretty good going overall and pretty entertaining game from both ends. It's one of those, Tom, I think that when you get a derby, especially the Merseyside derby, and it can be a bit meaty, the form book kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I read a stat about this game that Liverpool have now scored 3 at Goodison Park before Everton did, which is something that I'm sure they will enjoy. And if any Liverpool fans have any Everton fan friends, they won't hesitate to repeat that stat, I'm sure. But I think this is really important win for Liverpool, just in the context of their season. It's kind of like you feel like you have that from the start of the season when they lost that game 4-1 to we're coming to the end now, to come and to win 3-2. That just would have been unfathomable, really, that they could even score 3 goals in a game back in September, the way that they were playing. So yeah, it's been really impressive from Liverpool to get into the place that they're in right now. And yeah, it was quite an odd game in a lot of respects. Like, two of the strongest performers for both of these sides this season have been their goalkeepers, Courtney Brosnan and Jennifer Falk, and I think they both had quite weak games by their very high standards. And I'm sure we'll go on to speak more about her, but Kerry Holland was exceptional again for Liverpool. She's really been one of the driving forces behind them changing their form around this season. And yeah, I think it's really exciting times to be a Liverpool fan. I think for Everton, they had a really poor first half, and the second half was it was quite I found it quite an odd game because I didn't think either team played exceptionally well. I thought there was especially in the second half, Everton were pushing to try and get back on terms, but just never looked that convincing. And then obviously we'll get onto the red card as well, I'm sure, but that was a very odd incident too, But I think that both sides, I think Everton will obviously be disappointed that they're not winning at Anfield, at Goodison, but for Liverpool, it's a fantastic result. I think their first win away at Everton in the WSL since 2019. So that can't really be sniffed at. However, you get the result.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point in there with Kerry Holland as well. She often strikes me as one of those players that she never really has like a really bad patch, but she's always like a solid player and then has a purple patch every now and then. It's those times that I always sort of think that if she was English, she'd have a lot more clamour for her. She'd probably be a lot more famous. She'd probably have a lot more success internationally because of the players around her and stuff. And I think she wouldn't necessarily be a better player, but I think she'd be respected a lot more for the player that she is and for the level that she is at, because yeah, she is excellent. Izzy, on Everton's side, I know Tom led into a bit of it there, but I know if anyone's watched anything like the Women's Football Show or some of the other podcasts that go out, their defending is something that has been talked about a lot, and it really wasn't great.
No, it wasn't. Obviously, giving away that first penalty so early as well was really not ideal. I think it was Gabara that gave away the handball. And yeah, it hasn't been great, but I was quite surprised to see just how bad it was at times in this match. I would have thought that this would be something they kind of geared up for and were sort of ready and prepared for. And for the first half, at least, of that match, they didn't really seem switched on at all at the back. But having said that, I mean, I think in this match as well, it might be easy to overlook, especially because of the silly card at the end for Grace Fisk. But if you look at the stats, the defensive stats for this game, right, Liverpool had 38 clearances to Everton's 7. And I think that pretty much just sort of says how that game ended up, really. Yeah, I do think Liverpool probably deserved to win, but I think Everton easily could have taken it without sort of silly mistakes and without having to sort of encounter that clearly very persistent Liverpool backline before they all got sent off.
Yeah, I mean, the sending off was ridiculous, Jacob, wasn't it? I think Grace Fisk felt a bit aggrieved there was a challenge 5 seconds maybe beforehand that I think she should have got a foul for, and then just lashed out in, I don't know, I guess a kind of unprofessional manner, but I guess she got a dues for it.
Yeah, she did. Obviously, tripping up Cram's. I mean, it's a very silly red card, second yellow, and I think from Liverpool's perspective, it was lucky that they were 3-0 up before they went down to 10 players, because if it was a smaller margin, if it was 2 goals, if it was 1 goal, I think Everton would have definitely got a result out of the game. But yeah, I think let's not let the red card mask over what is a big win for Liverpool. I saw a stat that before the game, Everton hadn't lost to Liverpool in 8 previous derby games in the league. So for Liverpool to then go and beat Everton, and then looking at the bigger picture, it's been a really successful second half of the season for Liverpool. There's now 4 points separating Liverpool in 10th and Brighton in 6th. So there's a real opportunity for Liverpool to not only continue their form, but potentially push towards a kind of top half / top of the bottom half position in the table. Looking at the WSL form table, especially in the second half of the season, Liverpool are fifth. They've won 4, drawn 2, and lost 2, so it can be really successful. I think that can definitely be attributed to a successful January transfer window, especially considering they were sat rock bottom at Christmas with 2 points. So yeah, big turnaround from Liverpool.
The only thing that Liverpool will struggle with to get in that top half is the fixtures that they've got coming up. I've just been having a look. They've got West Ham at home in their next game towards the end of April, which they'll be hoping to get 3 points for. But after that, they've got Man City away and then Arsenal at home on the final day, which is not an easy set of fixtures, especially Man City. I mean, they might even have the league wrapped up by then, but Arsenal will be needing a win to fight with Chelsea and Man United on the final day for Champions League places, you would assume. But yeah, like you say, let's not take anything away from from the match itself, because as a neutral watching, I watched a bit of it before I set off to get to North London Derby, but I then watched the whole match of highlights anyway. And it was just a good game for the neutral. I think, if nothing else, it was a good advert for a not necessarily the highest quality game, but a really fun game to watch. And sometimes it's not necessarily the best quality games that are the most fun. And this was fantastic. Let's move on to the Manchester derby next. Man United 0, Man City 3. 2 almost identical headers from Viv Miedemar. 2 minutes apart gave the visitors the lead. And then Kasparai got a third, also from across early in the second half. Rebecca Knack also had a header ruled out, I think pretty unfairly because of a foul by Alba Vigino on Fallon Tullis-Joyce. City now know that a minimum of 5 points from their remaining fixtures, which are against Brighton, Liverpool and West Ham, will mean that they are champions. And I know that, Jacob, I know you watched the first half of this game, and City it seemed pretty dominant. In the first half, they had 10 shots to Man United's 1, which, yeah, and much more possession, many more passes completed. By everything that I've heard, they were just much the better team.
Yeah, it was a complete onslaught. As you said, I managed to catch the first half by watching it just before I set off for the North London derby. And it was just an onslaught from City. They had a chance to make it 1-0 within 25-30 seconds of the match. There was an Alex Greenwood chance that was saved by Fallon Tullis-Joyce. Lauren Hemp hit the bar after 15 minutes. And the momentum was so with City that you just felt like it was only a matter of time. And I think the nature of their goals is interesting to analyse, because the first goal was a Miedemar header. The second goal was a Miedemar header. The Knack disallowed goal was also a header from a corner. And the third goal was a Hemp cross to Kasparai. And this isn't anything new. Like City have such an aerial threat when you have players like Kirsten Kasparai and Alex Greenwood and Lauren Hemp putting in crosses, and then you have players like Bunny Shaw and Viv Miedemar that can get on the end of them. They'll score goals, and it was the same against Spurs the week before. City scored 5 against Spurs, and all of their goals were actually from crosses with 4 headers. So I wanted to do a bit of an analysis to try and see like how many goals of City's this season had come from crosses. I didn't quite have the time, but I think that would be an interesting analysis to see, because they are so dangerous from it. But yeah, it's another big win from City. They won the reverse fixture 3-0 as well. But it was poor from United. One of the factors why it might have been is because United did play in the Champions League midweek, whereas City had the whole week to rest. And United do look quite slim on the ground in terms of their squad selection. But yeah, it looks like it's a matter of when, not if, in terms of City getting the title now.
Yeah, I think we've known for probably a few weeks that it's City's to lose, and just with this win over Man United, who were first v second, but so dominant, I think we can almost put it to bed. Izzy, we mentioned about the fact that Man City were much the better team in the first half, but Man United were a bit better in the second. They actually had more shots than City in the second half, 9-5, and they limited City to just 1 shot on target in the second half, which was that Kasparai one. So they went, was it 35-40 minutes after that without conceding a shot on target at all. Did you feel like Man United had anything in this game, or was it just a case of City doing enough and then sitting back?
I mean, so I also didn't catch the second half, but from what I've seen and sort of looking at the stats, I mean, United had 2 big chances, and I think a lot of the time, we certainly saw this in the Subway League Cup final as well. I think United do get those chances and they do have those kind of swings of momentum against sort of top teams, but it seems like they're just unable to capitalise on that. And, yes, they have some big injuries out. Obviously, Dominique Janssen was out, Ella Toon's still out. But, when you've got someone like Lea Schall on your team, who's just like a serial winner and a serial goal scorer from Germany, and you've got just like a lot of talent in that team, like why aren't you converting those big chances against big teams? And that's what worries me about United, is like they can have a foothold in the game but not quite really convert it in the end. And again, it kind of comes back to that draw with West Ham that we saw, and it just feels like as the sort of games have packed in and they've been in more and more tournaments, it's becoming a lot more lethargic for them. And so when you face a team like Man City, who are going to put up a very, very strong game, United are never able to sort of put their best foot forward, I feel like. And I think that's now kind of being exposed slightly and is becoming quite an issue for them.
Yeah, and I think the issues for Man United are starting to come in the press as well, aren't they, Tom? Because there's been, I think, more rumours than anything actually concrete that Man United are, the sort of hierarchy, are unhappy with Mark Skinner and they're sort of being a bit closer in watching Man United's progress this season. Do you think it would be a bit harsh for them to let Skinner go, and sort of where do you think Man United would need to be for him to be still in a job come the start of next season?
Yeah, well, I believe that these rumours were kind of centred around the hierarchy, feeling it was very important for United to still be in the Champions League again next season. So whether that's true or not, I mean, obviously they will want to be, but whether it's true or not that Mark Skinner's job hinges on that prospect is hard to say. I think it's interesting with United. I don't think they should let him go, mainly because if they're not going to invest more in the side, then I'm kind of not sure what they're expecting, to be honest. I know they've had some higher profile signings, but I think the big difference when it comes to the top 4, there's not so much of a difference between them in terms of their starting 11s, but when you get further into the players who are coming in, the players who are replacing those who are starting, that's when there's a big difference. And I think this season, we all said it, I'm sure each one of us has said it on this podcast before, that the squad was too thin to compete on 4 fronts. And I'm afraid this City result was absolute proof of that, really, because they looked exhausted. And, like Maya Letitia making really uncharacteristic errors in this game and against Bayern in midweek. I know she doesn't ever rest, but she needs a rest, I think, to be honest. And I think that's the difficulty. They don't really have a player who can come in for her and perform to the same level. They're so reliant on her. So I think it depends on what their ambition is going to be, but I do think it would be harsh to get rid of Skinner, even if they finish 4th and they went out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, in my opinion. But I do think that should come with a kind of caveat that, next season, if you're not in the Champions League, I think you should be expecting to be challenging for the title if you've got your starting 11 in the way that City have. And like, there's been a lot of talk about this. I'm not saying that City have won the league just because they weren't in the Champions League, but there's no doubt that it has helped. As like compared to the injuries they had last season, they wouldn't have had as many injuries last season if they weren't in the Champions League. That's just a fact, I think. So, that's something that they've got to consider. I think it would be harsh, but, there's a lot of people that think Mark Skinner should be doing better with what he's got at the moment. But yeah, I mean, they have competed for long periods. It does just in this season. It just feels like they don't have, I think Izzy touched on it really well there about like the mentality in big games, not taking those big moments against big sides. And then Jacob as well mentioning the wide areas for City, like they had to play Lundqvist on the left side. She prefers it on the right, and City ran riot on that. They, Kirsten Kasperai gets in behind her for the third goal. I think it's a cross from her side as well that Miedemar nods in, for the second, I think. So, it's these kind of issues like playing players out of position, not having the replacements in that particular position that are costing them at the moment.
Yeah, and I think on your point of the squad depth, I was just looking at the subs benches for each team. Man United made 4 subs. The 3 that were left on the bench was Fia Middleton-Patel, Kaya Rendell, 2 goalkeepers, and then Lucy Robinson, who Sophie scored, doesn't actually have the data on her because I assume this might be potentially her first sub appearance, as in appearance on the bench, never mind getting on the pitch. 2 of the players they brought on was 16-year-old Layla Jury and 18-year-old Jessica Anderson. So it's not like they're bringing the superstars on, whereas Man City had Layla Wahabi, Gracie Pryor, Laura Blinkett-Brown, Sydney Lohman, Laura Coombs and Iman Bene as unused substitutes in this game. That was what they could go through.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say as well that Sonia Bonpastor spoke really interestingly on this after the League Cup final, because she was saying that a lot of the academy talent isn't ready. Like, she said that only one of the Chelsea academy talent was ready to start or play for Chelsea's first team properly, and that's Chloe Sawi. And like, you imagine that with United as well, like having to rely on these players who aren't ready, because it seems to be a problem potentially with the English system at the moment. Some really interesting comments from Bonpastor, who was obviously like before she became Lyon manager, she was head of the academy for a number of years there. So yeah, I think you can't rely. I don't think it's the same as bringing on an academy player in the men's game as it is in the women's, because they're not quite at the same level, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the game isn't as developed. The top end of the game is becoming, in the women's game, is becoming so much more developed so quickly compared to what it is in the men's game. Because it was already so developed, it's sort of stagnated a bit more, and everything's almost at that level already. And clubs are finding those extra marginal gains by things like their youth talent coming through quicker. Think of places like Barcelona having such success with things like that. Whereas in the women's game, we've only recently seen the top 2 leagues become professional, never mind the actual youth setup behind that. So it's one of those things that I'm sure in time will end up being a factor that they can rely on. But for now, the youth setup, you can't rely on them just to come through, because don't get me wrong, it would be fantastic if a 16-year-old comes through and is the best thing since sliced bread, but it's unlikely, and it's also a lot of the time not good for the youngsters. It's not good for their confidence. They might get injured. It could be a number of things that it's important to get them in at the right time and do it properly rather than just rushing them in because you want to give your centre-back a rest. Let's move on to the North London derby. We were obviously all there. As I mentioned before, there was a Decoding the Match episode. I was your host, but Jacob, Tom, Izzy and Laura Howard, and Izzy's sister, actually, Lucy, were all on it as well. So go watch that if you haven't already, because it was really fun to put together. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. In terms of what actually happened in the game, Alessia Russo scored a hat-trick in under half an hour, and then a Freedom Ornum own goal meant it was 3-1 at half-time. Second half had 3 goals from 3 different subs: Caitlin Ford, Bethany England and Stina Blackstenius all getting on the score sheet to make it back-to-back 5-2 losses from Spurs. It was also back-to-back hat-tricks for the opponent centre-forward. Obviously, Bunny Shaw getting a hat-trick last weekend. This weekend, it's Alessia Russo. And Spurs' next game is away at Chelsea next week in the FA Cup. So I'm sure any Chelsea forwards are going to be vying for a forward place as much as they can. When I got into the press box on Saturday, I heard Tom and Ellen, friend of the pod, Ellen LR, discussing a stat, which, I'll credit to. I don't know who it was, which one of you two came up with it, but it's a very good one, that Spurs at that point had never scored a goal at the Emirates. They had scored, obviously, at Boreham Wood, but the Freedom Ornum own goal was Spurs' first goal at the Emirates. So Bethany England was the first Spurs player to score at the Emirates. I also want to quote here a really good stat from Adam Salter. Do you know what? I had this idea for a stat and I thought this would be really good to include. And then I was like, I'm not sure how to work this out, but I know a man that can. If you don't know who Adam Salter is, he's so good with sort of like the history of Arsenal women. He's putting this huge archive together. He's done so much good work with it, and he's a lovely bloke as well. At the North London Derby this weekend, there were 46,123 in attendance. The game was a big deal for Kim Little. She's recently had her 400th appearance. She's signed another 1-year contract with the club. Her family were there at the game. There was a massive tifo for her. So I thought, well, what was Kim Little's first North London Derby? Like I said, 46,000 in attendance this weekend. There was 1,407 in attendance for her first North London derby. It was in the FA Cup back in 2017. Arsenal won 10-0 and Kim Little scored in that game as well. That shows a bit about how the game's changed. I can't imagine Arsenal Spurs being a FA Cup game at the moment. A, it being 10-0 and B, only 1,400 people being there. So yeah, thank you, Adam, for the stat. And yeah, really good. I thought to see how the game's grown. And Izzy, like I mentioned there was so much fuss over Kim Little, and I think in this game, as she has done many times this season, she's showing that just because she's getting a little older doesn't mean she's not the player that she once was.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to speak about Kim Little, because I think like everything that is ever said about her should have been said and has been said, but like she's just like phenomenal, and she's so humble, and she's, you know, so unselfish, even to the point where I sometimes think it's a fault. You know, you're screaming at her to score, but she always wants to pass the ball. But yeah, I think from everything you hear sort of from people who played with her, I saw a quote from Jessie Gale the other day, who said that when she was sort of thinking about loan options at the beginning of the season, Kim Little just sat down and had like a really, really long talk with her about it. And I think that kind of sums up sort of the player and the leader that she is. But I also do think, you know, like especially towards the end of last season, there was that sort of spell where she was sort of out through injury and things like that. And you can just tell when she's not on the pitch. I think she really, really, like, we talk about sort of key midfield players that sort of pull the strings, but she's like the epitome of that. Probably in world football, she's like the Scottish Bon Mati. She, like, when they're not, Arsenal play worse without her, and they've had to fix that for when she retires. But I'm glad she's signed a year-long contract, because yeah, we need her more than ever. And I don't think she's getting tired anytime soon. So I don't know how she does it, but I'm tired just walking up the stairs, but hey.
I was sat next to Helen Jerome in the press box that some of you listening may know. And yeah, we were discussing the fact that how long can Kim Little go for, and that potentially, well, I think for us Arsenal fans, hopefully if Georgia Stanway does join the summer, that might be sort of a long-term replacement for her. But yeah, it's not looking like it needs to be quite as urgent as I'd have thought at the start of the season. The game had, well, I should say actually, Arsenal are now on the longest winning run in the WSL, which is 5 games in a row they've won, and they're on the longest unbeaten run in the WSL at 12 games. They had 2.8 XG in this game compared to just 0.5 for Spurs. And Tom, a lot of that came from Alessia Russo, and Obviously, she got 3 goals, but I thought it was an all-round fantastic performance. I know for your piece on the halfway line, you gave her a 10 out of 10 rating. Yeah, I think she thoroughly deserved it.
It's actually only my second 10 out of 10 rating ever. And the other one I gave to Ni Fai on her final performance for Liverpool, and she came off the bench and conceded a goal, to be fair. So this is probably the one that was actually warranted. Sorry, Neve. She's a legend. I got it signed off, guys. Okay. But yeah, I think that Russo was phenomenal in this game. She's taken her game to another level, especially in the last couple of months. I think her understanding with Stina Blackstenius is so important. And I think their ability now, Arsenal, to play in a way that surprises teams is really impressive, because I know earlier this season, I think Mark Skinner said, you know, he kind of can predict what Arsenal are going to do. And against Tottenham, you know, Arsenal played very direct and over the top, especially at the start of the game. And when you think of that, you think of like usually it would be Stina Blackstenius playing through the middle or Olivia Smith playing through the middle to exploit that space in behind that Tottenham might leave. But it was Alessia Russo who played, and she was able to do that. And I think that, it's 3 great strikers' goals as well, 3 very different strikers' goals, and 3 kind of like admittedly poor defending from Spurs for a couple of them at least. And yeah, I thought she was just fantastic. I mean, afterwards, Tim Stillman asked Renee about Alessia Russo, and one of the things that she spoke about was about this environment that Arsenal try and provide for a person and a player to grow, and how essentially she views Alessia Russo as the complete footballer at the moment. And it's hard to disagree with that, the way that she's playing, and just the way that she can play as a 10 and a 9 right now is so important for the way that Arsenal want to play, and makes them so. It gives them that unpredictable edge, which I think has been a big problem for Arsenal in years gone by, especially in recent times, even in this season, where teams have known how to deal with their attacking threats and they've looked a bit listless at times. And I think this development in Russo's game has really helped Arsenal to be more effective in that space.
Yeah, she is just, at the moment, I think one of the best players in the world. I think it's one of those years where I think if there wasn't a World Cup or a Euros or something this year, Arsenal got on a good run, etc., she'd probably be in that conversation again, like she was last year for the Ballon d'Or with Alessia Russo. Jacob, I want to give you a bit of a chance to talk about Spurs though, because yes, it was a damning result, 5-2 in the end, but I think that the general consensus from the people that I've spoken to is that it wasn't that Spurs were bad, it was just that Arsenal were really good. Spurs generally played quite well. You actually had more possession in the game, especially in the second half, 56% of the possession in that second half. But it was kind of in front of goal that was not necessarily the finishing of the chances, but the creating of the chances that was the problem. Bethany England coming on did change the game a bit. Again, I think Tamberg wasn't bad leading the line. She just wasn't that next level that Beth England was. You had 3 shots on target in this game, all of them from Beth England within 8 minutes of her coming on the pitch, and the third of those was obviously that top corner finish from a narrow angle. I thought Beth England, as good as Alessia Russo was, and obviously took home the Player of the Match trophy and things like that, I thought Beth England also had a great game as one of, if not Spurs' number 1 player.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's difficult for Spurs in terms of team selection, whether to start England or Tamberg or both of them. But yeah, Beth England was fantastic when she came on. She had a chance just before she scored one of the shots that you mentioned, which was an incredible save from Daphne van Domselaar. So if she had scored that and her goal, it would have been a much tighter game. But I think Spurs played well, but only at times when there was almost no pressure. Like Spurs played well when it was kind of, I think when it was 4-2 or 4-1 and they were kind of getting back into the game. But I think ultimately we were the masters of our own downfall with this one. I think to go 2-0 down within 6 minutes, that's really, really difficult to then have the mentality to turn it around away at the Emirates in front of such a big crowd. And then as soon as you get it back to 2-1, for Lisa Kopp to make the mistake that she did, it's such a knock in confidence. And yeah, you can't make a mistake like that and expect Alessia Russo not to capitalise on it. I think, yeah, we did pick up in the second half. As you said, we had more possession, more shots in the second half. But ultimately, it's another 5-2 scoreline that we've lost back-to-back weeks, 5-2 to Arsenal, 5-2 to City. It's the 3rd WSL loss in a row. And I think it feels disappointing because earlier on in the season, even though we weren't necessarily getting wins against the bigger teams, we were putting in better performances. We had the 0-0 against Arsenal in the reverse fixture at Brisbane Road. We drew 3-3 against United. We had narrow losses against Chelsea in which we competed. And it feels like some of that's gone away almost. And I'm slightly worried from a season point of view that our season might just end up petering out, because that's now 3 WSL losses in a row. We've got Chelsea away in the FA Cup next, then United in the WSL. So there's a chance that we could be on a run of 4 or 5 losses, and ultimately we're not going to finish higher than 5th, and we also might not finish lower than 5th. So I think it could be an interesting period for Tottenham for the end of the season. I will end on some positivity because in a period of uncertainty for the Spurs men's team, I think there's been a lot of certainty for the women's team in the last couple of weeks. Last week, I think it was, we announced 3 contract extensions within the space of a few days. The most important ones of which are Olivia Holt and Martin Ho. That's it's so important to have tied both of them down. It's probably your player of the season and a manager who's led you to hopefully 5th in the WSL. And I think I've been worried that if Spurs men get relegated, the effect that might have on funding and investment into the women's team. But I think there's been a lot of encouragement that's happened in the last couple of weeks. And the support in the away end at the Emirates was brilliant. Like we brought a good contingent to the Emirates. The fans were in really good voice. And one thing that I love is we have players that really do care, like seeing Beth England come on and score in, I think it was her 200th WSL appearance from memory. And to see players like Olivia Holt sign a contract, Tinka Tamberg has such passion for the club. She came off as a sub. She came off the pitch on our end and she did a bit of a badge tap. And I think that's what matters. Like when you have players that care and know what it means for the club, I think that's what's important.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it was 200 appearances of Beth England as well. I think she was obviously a great player at Chelsea. And I think since coming to Spurs, she's been a fantastic player for you. And yeah, Tinka Tamberg is another one that I find a bit strange because you don't, and it's a credit to Spurs because you don't often get someone joining a team that isn't already winning trophies in another country and immediately loving the club quite so much. There must be something about the club that they've done to welcome her in so well.
There is. I mean, there's a story of Tamberg visiting White Hart Lane with her dad when she was like 14 years old, and she was like a huge fan of Harry Kane, and she's spoken about it before. So that's the reasoning. Yeah,
she was a Spurs fan already. There was me thinking it was just a nice place to be. No. Well, they got her this far. Let's go on to Sunday's games. Chelsea 4. Villa 3 was at midday on Sunday. A lightning first half in this one. Chastity Grant opening the scoring in the 2nd minute. But it was 3-1 to Chelsea after half an hour with Sam Kerr, Naomi Gurma and Lauren James all getting on the score sheet before a double from Kirsty Hansen got Villa level at half time. Hansen nearly got a hat-trick and a winning goal just after the hour, but the second half saw just one goal, Sjögren getting the winner, giving the hosts a 4-3 victory. With her goal from distance. Chelsea, once I looked at the stats, I didn't see this game live because I was out, but I looked at the stats, I watched all the highlights back, things like that, and Chelsea looked like they absolutely dominated this. They had 66% of the possessions, about 2/3 of it, completed more than double the number of passes, had about double the XG, more XG on target, 8 shots to Aston Villa's 3 on target, which does mean that Hannah Hampton didn't make a save. But yeah, Chelsea absolutely needed this because if they'd have drawn this game and it had finished 3-3, which was the score at 80 minutes, they'd have been 4th in the table. But yeah, that Sjögren winner puts them up to 2nd, and it's one of those one goal, one strike from distance, one moment of quality in a game that might make all the difference on the final day, especially with Chelsea coming up against Man United, which will likely be a battle for a top 3.
Yeah, I think that goal from Sjögren will end up being so decisive for so many things in Chelsea. I know that, she's been a bit lost at the club recently, and she's spoken about sort of her future there and wanting to stay and things, and obviously hasn't played as much this season, as much as she'd like. But I think, due for various reasons, she's obviously finding a bit more time on the pitch, and being able to score that winning goal, I mean, for her and also for Chelsea, is just so important. It was a great game, to be honest. I woke up late because the clocks went forward, and I got up and I was like, oh my God, it's nearly time. It was all a bit, and I just thought, it's fine, I'll just turn on the football. When you're like, I'll get a coffee and I'll just turn on the football and it's fine. Suddenly, it's like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, what is going on? Before I know it, it's like 3-3, and I'm just like, whoa, guys. But It was a great match, and I do, to Aston Villa's credit, I thought Chastity Grant was great, like really, really, really good. I think she's really growing into the season now. Finally, obviously Kirsty Hansen, but I think at least for the first half, Villa really made the most of the ball when they did get it, and I think for a while it wasn't really looking like Chelsea were doing that. They lost the ball a few times, and it was sort of like, oh, even when Chelsea came back with the goals, it still felt like Villa were in it. But I think then Lauren James just sort of switched on to her sort of machine autopilot thing that she does, which is like better than anything else you've ever seen. And then you're like, never mind. But yeah, I mean, fair play to Villa for getting 3 goals in that, because it wasn't an easy feat by any means.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea, most of their players anyway, did a good job defensively. Obviously, like I've said, Hannah Hampton didn't actually make a save in this game. 3 shots on target for Aston Villa and 3 goals. One player that did have a great game was Lynn Vilms. She has 6 assists away from home now in the WSL this season. No other player in the whole league has more than 3 assists away from home. In this game, she created 4 chances. And obviously, 3 of those ended up in goals. I know, Jacob, you had quite a lot to talk about how Villa played in this game.
Yeah, I did. I think there are a couple of stats just on some of their players. I mean, you mentioned Lynn Vilms before. Not only has she got that stat on the most assists away from home, but she's got the most assists, or the joint most assists in the league with 7. And when you have a player as well like Kirsty Hansen, she's got 12 WSL goals, which is the second most. It's also the same amount as both Bunny Shaw and Alessa Russo, what they ended on last season. It's really impressive for a team who are 9th in the league to have a player who is second top goal scorer and joint top assister. You've got to credit Villa, and they've competed, although they've been inconsistent with some of their results. They competed with some of the top teams. They got a 1-1 draw against Arsenal earlier on the season. They beat United in the first half of the season 1-0, and they drew recently against City. I think Villa's main concern is their defensive side. They've conceded the joint most goals in the league with 41. I think it's level with West Ham. And yeah, I'd be concerned from their point of view. There was a time during the season when everyone was looking quite positively at Villa's defence, because I think they had 5 clean sheets at one point, which was almost the joint or second most in the league. But since then, I think they've conceded quite a lot. They conceded 7 to Spurs, 6 to City earlier on in the season, and obviously 4 to Chelsea on the weekend. And yeah, I mean, there is a chance for Villa to kind of finish higher up the table now. There's, as I mentioned, with Everton and Liverpool, it's so tight in that kind of middle of the table between 10th and 6th, and Villa are only 9th, but they're a point off 6th. So although they didn't get the result, I think they'll take encouragement from the fact that they have really competed against Chelsea in this one.
Yeah, I think Villa have, they're not a team that's going to be flying high like Chelsea have this season. They're not going to be going for Europe. So the fact they can still compete in these games is fantastic. And Tom, I know we've been really complimentary of Kirsty Hansen this season. She's now the joint top scorer away from home in the league with 5 goals. She's got 12 goals in total, like Jacob mentioned, that equals the Golden Boot from last season. She's done that without taking any penalties, which I think is also very impressive. But for Villa as a whole, Rachel Daly is the only other player, I should say, with more than 2 goals for Villa this season. She's only got 3, so it's not like they've got loads of goals coming forward. I think Kirsty Hansen scored, I think off the top of my head, it was 44% of their goals in the league, which just seems like, almost feels like a bit too much dependency on one player. We saw this with Liverpool early in the season with Beata Olsen. We saw it a bit with West Ham last season with Martinez, although they say he obviously chipped in quite a lot as well. But yeah, this sort of like over-reliance on Hansen, do you think this is something Villa need to sort out, or do they just sort of try and get a bit more out of her?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something they need to sort out, because I mean, I think Hansen's one of the biggest XG overachievers in the league, and we do know that is, as great as she is and as talented as she is, and she may continue to overperform her XG, but it does tend to even out eventually. And when it evens out again, then there's that concern about where are the goals going to come from to make up that. So I think they have a lot of work to do in the summer. especially in attacking positions. But I think Rachel Daly's been out for a little while as well, and that probably hasn't helped as far as her being their other main source of goals. It's interesting with Villa. Obviously, they brought Brian Sorensen on board as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of affects their business in the summer as well. I thought Ellen Ellard mentioned on commentary when Brian Sorensen came on about how odd it was to see him in a Villa tracksuit, and it was very weird not to see him in his Everton gear. But I think he's a great addition to the coaching staff there, or to the team there. So it'll be really interesting to see how they progress. I must say I am a little bit disappointed in them this season, because I thought they would step on a little bit more after that brilliant end of the season last season, where I think they won 5 games on the bounce after looking like they'd probably never win a game again for a while. It's just been a bit frustrating, that I'm sure for Villa fans and for Villa themselves, that they haven't been able to carry that form into this season. I think it's a tricky one, because I think obviously they'll be happy that they've competed against Chelsea, but I also feel like if you score 3 goals away from home against Chelsea and come away with nothing, I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, I think any team going anywhere, basically, if you score 3 goals and don't get a result, it's a flag that something needs to be changed. Let's move on to the other team in claret and blue in the WSL. West Ham, they drew 1-1 at home with London City Lionesses. Yana Fernandez opened the scoring in the first half, finishing off a nice counter-attack. But that was then cancelled out by Una Surin's strike from distance. London City Lionesses, looking at the stats, tended to have a bit more of the game in this. They had 58% of the possession. They completed about 150 more passes in the game. West Ham did have more shots, 7-6, but London City Lionesses had more XG, 1.2 compared to 0.25 for West Ham, and the XG on target was 0.74 combined for the two teams. I think, you know what, I should have checked this properly, but I think the West Ham side had 2 shots on target, and one of them was obviously that strike from distance. That Una Siren goal as well, Izzy, at first I thought it was going to be really bad goalkeeping, to be honest, because it didn't go right in the corner. It was near enough where Lete was standing, but then watching the replay, you can actually see the ball swerve quite a lot through the air, and yeah, it's a bit of a banger.
Yeah, it was. I didn't get to watch this match, so it was one of those things where you kind of log on to Twitter and that's the first thing you see. It's just like the clip of it just going like, woo! Yeah, I watched it a few times. It was great. I also just imagine the ball kind of going like, ooh, nah, you know?
She shouted it as she did it.
Yeah. It just felt poetic.
But Tom, West Ham, we know I know they're your second team, but they are a team that have been struggling to score. They're the second lowest scorers in the WSL this season. This one, they've racked up a whole 0.25 XG and 0.09 XG on target from 7 shots, which is real like low value chances. Do you think that's all they can do? Do you think they're getting desperate? Do you think they're being told shoot from distance, or you know what do you think it is?
Yeah, it was an odd one, because they did really well at kind of exploiting London City Lionesses' insistence on playing out from the back, because I thought they looked really uncomfortable at the back, London City Lionesses, especially Elena Lete, Vasa Sangare. Elena Lete passed the ball to West Ham attackers a couple of times, and Sangare missed out a few passes, and West Ham were trying to press high. And I think when they did press high and win ball in advanced areas, just the shooting was really poor. They were just snatching at it and just not quite having the composure that obviously Una Siren has to score that magnificent goal. I think, there's just something I feel like West Ham, these two are, they're like, I think they're having a poor end to the season, and they're both going to be okay, because obviously London City Lioness has built up such a cushion in the first half of the season. And I just think, looking at Leicester City's fixtures, I think Leicester City are almost 100% certainty for that relegation playoff now. So I think they're kind of benefiting from that, especially West Ham, really. And they're kind of getting away with one, I think, West Ham, and a lot needs to change for next season. And they've got the firepower up front. It just, I mean, I don't know. I still think it was a mistake to let Rhian Skinner go, but yeah.
It's not like they've improved much since she's gone. I don't think they. I think from the trajectory they were on, I don't think they're necessarily in any better or worse position for having let her go. But we'll see what Biccarinio can do in future years with them as well. But yeah, it's a tough time for West Ham fans at the moment, seeing the quality they've got, and kind of a bit like we were talking about with Spurs earlier. It's not necessarily that their finishing is terrible; it's that they're just not creating good finishing opportunities. And that's you can have the best player in the world from inside the 6-yard box, but if you can't get the ball to them they're not going to be scoring many goals. Jacob, London City Lionesses are now just a point away from confirming safety with 3 games to go, and that is not something we've been able to say about a promoted side for a few years now. Do you think that's? I mean, how would you sort of rate their season so far? Because we know that they're not quite your average promoted side, but they're, for me anyway, they're probably doing a bit better than I expected.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, this one, because I think London City Lionesses had a really good start to the season. They weren't really picking up points against the top teams, but they're picking up some really good results against the lower teams, which kind of earned them a kind of, they were at like 6th at the winter break, and they obviously had the managerial change at the Christmas break, and you'd have to say it hasn't really worked out, because they're now without a win in their last 5 in the league. It's the second worst form out of any team in the division. The only team with worst form is Leicester. And it's really hard to benchmark London City Lionesses, because yes, compared to teams like Crystal Palace and Bristol City who have come up and gone straight back down, London City Lionesses obviously aren't going to do that. But when you get promoted, invest the amount of money that they did, have a good start to the season, and then have a manager change midway through the season, I think they'll probably be disappointed they haven't kicked on and played and justified the reason as to why they made the managerial change. So London City's next game, although the next WSL fixtures are 3-4 weeks away now, their next game is against Leicester, I think. So there's a big opportunity to kind of put that to bed, get a win, and potentially end the season on a positive.
Yeah, let's talk about their next opponents as well. Leicester 0, Brighton 1 in the final match of the weekend. Kikiseke getting the only goal of the game. If you didn't see this match, to give you an inkling of how good it was, when I watched the highlights in the Women's Football Show earlier today, there was one highlight in the first half before they swiftly moved on. And it wasn't that good a highlight either. It felt like they just had to put something else in there. It's 7 losses in a row now in the WSL for Leicester. Brighton, on the other hand, are the only team to keep a clean sheet in both of their last 2 WSL games, which I thought was interesting. And it seems like Brighton were pretty good value for a 1-0 victory. They had 1.8 XG compared to 0.6 for Leicester. Triple the shots, 15 versus 5. You maybe would expect with 20 shots to get more than 1 goal in a game, but there was actually only 7 shots on target, all 7 of those for Brighton, and the goal itself was pretty much a tap in from a long ball forward from Fran Kirby, who one of those goals where that feels like it should. I can't remember who it was that said it on. I saw it on X. Someone said it, and I was like, absolutely agree. Feels like that should be the assist. Was it Tom Gary? It felt like that should be the assist before Rose Kafaji basically had a really simple pass over to Kikiseke to tap it in. But yeah, not a good day for Leicester, and just it seemed like a relatively just professional job for Brighton. But Jacob, I know you wanted to speak a bit about Leicester in this game, because and another goal without a game, another game without a goal even.
Yeah, I was going to speak to that point, actually. As you mentioned, Sam, 7th WSL loss in a row for Leicester, and I think their problems lie in attack. They haven't scored in 5 of those 7 games, and they actually haven't scored more than 1 goal in any game this season. They're the lowest scorers in the division by quite a way. They've only scored 9 goals all season. Defensively, they are slightly better. They've actually conceded the same amount as Tottenham this season, and I think Leicester are probably as good as down. It's only the kind of mathematical that means that they're still technically not in the relegation playoff. They've got London City, Arsenal, Chelsea and Everton in their last 4. They've obviously got that game in hand against Arsenal, but 3 of those 4 games are away. So I wonder where points are going to come from Leicester. West Ham getting that draw, getting that point against London City mean West Ham are now 4 clear of Leicester. So there's a bit of daylight now between 12th and 11th. I was having a bit of a look at the WSL 2 this weekend, because obviously if Leicester do finish last, they will play whoever comes third in the WSL 2. And there was a big result in the WSL 2 this weekend because Crystal Palace beat league leaders Charlton. As it stands, Leicester would play Crystal Palace, who are in third, but there's a lot to play for. Crystal Palace are 6 points behind Charlton, 3 points behind Birmingham. They do have a game in hand over Charlton, so it's really tight. And also it's Charlton Birmingham on the last day. So there's a lot to be decided in the WSL 2. So it will be one of Charlton, Birmingham or Crystal Palace that Leicester will play. And at this rate, maybe you'd be concerned for what their chances might be.
Yeah, Jacob, you've done really well actually, unknowingly, because you didn't know that I'd done this, but letting me do a little selfless plug, because I've done a piece for hopefully up on the WSL website later this week about the WSL 2 promotion race, because there's 4 teams currently that could still win the league mathematically. I think Newcastle are unlikely, but yeah, between Charlton, Birmingham and Crystal Palace, it genuinely, because Charlton and Birmingham still got to play each other as well, it could genuinely be Palace that end up usurping one, if not both of them, to get up there. So yeah, it's a really exciting end. I know from speaking and listening to Charlie Parks, friend of the pod, she is petrified of Crystal Palace being third, because I think she's come to terms with the fact Leicester are going to finish last and that they probably will be all right against the team, the WSL 2, but she's scared of Palace because they've got a pretty good record against Leicester. I think it was before Christmas they met in the Cup, and Palace won 3-0, which, as we know, historically, generally the WSL 2 teams or WSL Championship, etc., have not done well against WSL teams, but Palace seem to have Leicester's number. And there's also the fact that I said when Rachel Williams signed for Leicester that would be the sort of signing that, if they do finish last, it would either be the difference between them finishing 11th and 12th, or if not, it will be the difference between them winning or losing that relegation playoff. But I don't think she's scored yet since joining the club, so maybe I'm wrong on that point, but I don't know. I feel like it would be kind of Rachel Williams to not score all season and then pop up with the winning goal on the playoff. We'll wait and see what comes there, but we'll round it off there because we've been talking for an hour already. That went pretty quickly, talking about the 6 games that happened this weekend. I told you there was a lot to go through. Let's move on to Aerial Fantasy. And I won't dive too much into how we did this weekend because as a group, us 4, we didn't do great. Me and Jacob got 37 each. Izzy has closed the gap on me and Jacob for, I think, like the 5th week running now, with 46. But Tom, you're our top scorer this week with 54. How'd you do it?
I think Kirsten Kasparai and Kirsty Hansen, I think, basically, is the short answer.
It's a pretty basic tactic, isn't it? Yeah, I've just looked at your team. Yeah, you had both of them. You also, as many of us did, Captain Bunny Shaw. But yeah, those 2 I think were enough to beat us lot anyway. But the number 1 player in our league was, again, Stanley's team, Villanova, still number 1 in the world as well. Second place is only 21 points behind, though, in the Decode and the WSL league. A quick reminder that whoever is number 1 in the league at the end of the season will either win a WSL team shirt of their choice or 2 tickets to a WSL game of their choice next season. So, yeah, Stanley, if you do win the league, make sure to get in touch, because I don't know how to get in touch with you, not gonna lie. Otherwise, I can't give you your shirt or your tickets. Anyway, 41 points this game week. Well done. Izzy will be like, "Oh, just give it to me. I'll make sure they get it. The best score this week in the Decode and the WSL League was, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, but Shadji's team, which is You Just Got Russoed, which I did quite enjoy. The only player in the Decode and the WSL League to get triple figures of points this week, 100 points, meaning they are up to 22nd in the Decode and the WSL League. They captained Alessia Russo, which has done pretty well. If you captain someone that scores a hat-trick, you're always going to do pretty well. 32 points. They also had Kirsten Kasperai, Kirsty Hansen, Viv Miedemar, Caitlin Hayes, and then Madison Haley, who I didn't realise got 6 points because she's a midfielder that got a clean sheet and is a visionary. So, yeah,
The more you
that's
know.
where visionary points are good. This is why we love visionaries. They come out of nowhere and just prop up with 6 points. And yeah.
Or in Tom's case, Imagabaro concedes a penalty.
Wow! You're gonna. I think I've actually already transferred her out of my team, and there isn't a deadline for like 4 weeks.
Said enough.
Just couldn't look at her anymore. Couldn't look at her.
According to, I'm just looking at your team on the app as well at the moment, Tom. Apparently, Shimazu is out injured now as well, so that might have to be your other transfer. But Imagabaro got a point. So there's obviously no negative points for giving away a penalty. I guess you can't necessarily pinpoint exactly who gives away a penalty.
Sam, don't remind her. She's on the call right now. Look, I can see her furiously typing away, trying to take away my
minus 300 points. Minus
Imagabaro
however many points it needs for Izzy to be above Tom in the league.
Yeah. Correct.
We'll leave it there for now. That is our last sort of regular pod for, well, a few weeks. We're going to be back with a preview show in a few weeks' time. Because the WSL is on a bit of a break now. So that was the review show today. We have a Know Your Stat episode coming out, which I usually host these Know Your Stat episodes, but Izzy didn't want to face Tom and Jacob in a game of Know Your Stat, so Izzy's hosting it. And then next week we've got something new being released. It's a new series that we're calling Decoding Duels. In this series, basically within the four of us, two of us will go up against two other people from in and around the world of the WSL. In the sort of inaugural episode, we're going up against Jack and Harry from the Women's Football Chat. If you don't know who they are, they're a really good channel on YouTube. I watch them quite a lot. They do a lot of live streams. They do a lot of analysis videos all about women's football, largely the WSL and the Champions League. But they're a really good watch. They're very knowledgeable and they're a really good guest to have on. So yeah, me and Izzy take them on next week. So tune in to next week's pod to see how we get on. But for now, we'll love you and leave you for a few weeks. Well, not for a few weeks, sorry, because we're seeing you in Know Your Stat later. But yeah, thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, listener, for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Decoding the WSL, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give the video a like, all that good stuff, because it helps us grow. We're getting there. We're getting there quicker as well. We're almost at 500 subscribers now. That's sort of my target before we get to the summer. 500 subscribers in, a month and a half. I reckon we can do it. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll speak to you at the next one.